What's up everybody, Commander Sanctum here, and today we have a brand new deck tech using Loot the Pathfinder. Loot is a 2/4 Beast Noble for 2 and Teamer that is Double Strike, Vigilance, and Haste. Loot also has 3 exhaust abilities, that is, abilities that can only be used once per game. The green ability generates 3 mana of one color, the blue ability draws 3 cards, and the red ability does 3 damage to any target. For any old school players, these abilities may seem familiar. The blue ability is basically Ancestral Recall, the red ability is Lightning Bolt, and the green ability, while it doesn't have a direct correlation, is basically like a Black Lotus or a non-black Dark Ritual. For this deck tech, we'll be focusing on 2 things, the first of which is Loot's exhaust mechanic. While exhaust abilities can only be used once per game, they're also once per object, meaning if we somehow replace our loot with another loot, we can use the exhaust abilities again. The best way to do this is, of course, with flicker effects. Alongside these flicker effects to reset our loot value engine, we'll also be focusing in on its creature type, Beast. That's right, this deck tech will be a Beast Kindred deck, letting our King of the Beasts, Loot, lead the way into getting and casting our bigger and more powerful beast spells. Flicker effects and beasts sounds like a powerful combination, right? With that, let's get into the card highlights. Since we want to get as much value out of our loot as possible, we need to be able to consistently flicker him in order to reset his exhaust abilities. To start with, we have 2 cards that will flicker a creature at the end of our turn in Thassa Deep Dwelling and Conjurer's Closet. It's important to remember that Loot also has haste, so even flickering him at our end step means that we can use him right away afterwards. We also have the, by far, best flicker effect for Loot in Displacer Kitten, which can flicker him whenever a non-creature spell is cast. While we will be using a creature-oriented deck, there are still plenty of non-creature spells cast, making the Kitten an extremely potent way to combo with Loot. We also have Ghostly Flicker, Essence Flux, and Teferi's Time Twist, which are all instants that will flicker a creature. Ghostly Flicker even lets you flicker out 2 objects, which can be creatures, artifacts, or even lands if need be. Teferi's Time Twist is not an immediate return flicker, meaning that the creature comes back at the end step instead of immediately, but does have the added benefit of giving the creature a +1/+1 counter, which may be relevant. Likewise, Teferi's also says any permanent can be flickered, making it good protection against targeted removal of any kind. Alongside the flicker effects, we also have a few spells that can make token copies of Loot, allowing us to obtain another version of him to activate the exhaust abilities. Now, these versions will only be usable once per exhaustion ability since you can't flicker out tokens, but it's still a great way to get more value out of Loot. And since Loot is a legendary creature, we need ones that specifically make non-legendary tokens, which both Quantum Misalignment and Irenicus's Vile Duplication do. Quantum Misalignment even has Rebound, meaning you'll get another copy at your next upkeep, meaning even more loot to go around. Now for the beasts, Loot's subjects if you will. To start out with, we have some beasts that are just overall very good. Gruul Rage Beast is a bomb and is pretty much always a great way to start wiping our opponent's boards of creatures. Siege Behemoth is a great way to end a game if you have a large army, as it'll make them all effectively unblockable, at least as far as damage is concerned. Since most beast spells are more expensive in nature, Herald of Ilharg is a great way to get a ton of damage out to your opponents, as he will constantly be getting bigger the more creatures we cast, which will in turn do more and more damage to our opponents with each cast. Like I mentioned before, beasts are pretty expensive from a CMC perspective. Thankfully, there are a number of beasts that will make our other beasts cost less. Goreclaw Terror of Kal Sisma doesn't directly specify beasts, but since most are at least 4 power, most of them will have their cost reduced. It's also a great way to give our army trample, making it much easier to finish our opponents in an attack-heavy deck. Slinza the Spiked Stampede is an all-in-one sort of package, making our beasts cheaper, bigger, and acting as potential removal with his fight mechanic. Krosan Warchief is the OG beast reduction spell, reducing them all by 1 colorless, while also letting you regenerate a beast if it's being destroyed. Since Loot is likely going to be a major target for our opponents, this regenerate ability is likely going to come in clutch in many scenarios. We also have beasts that will create other beasts in certain scenarios. Thragtusk is a nice life gain and token generator package, giving us immense value for a simple 5 mana. Quartzwood Crasher only creates tokens when creatures with trample deal damage, but pair it with an attacking Goreclaw and you'll have the chance to make a huge number of dinosaur beasts that turn. And I mean, come on, dinosaur beasts? That's just too cool to pass up. Finally, Elder Gargaroth is able to give you exactly what you need when you need it. The fact that its ability triggers even on blocking makes this beast one to be reckoned with. Next up, we have a number of beast or beast adjacent cards that can draw us cards. Everyone knows that card draw is one of the most powerful things to do in Magic, so the more we can get, the better. We have 2 elf support cards in Wirewood Siege and Woodland Liege, which both draw a card whenever a beast enters. This includes beast tokens, making these both very powerful effects, and the Savage even includes beasts that enter your opponent's battlefields. Kindred Discovery doesn't inherently say beast on it, but let's be honest, in this deck, it might as well. Discovery not only draws you a card when a beast enters the battlefield, but also whenever you attack, drawing you a card for each beast that is attacking. Needless to say, Kindred Discovery is going to be one of, if not the, best card draw spells in such a deck. We also have spells that care about creatures of a certain power entering to draw a card. Garruk's Pack Leader triggers whenever a creature of power 3 or greater enters, and Temur Ascendancy and Kiora Behemoth Beckoner do so for creatures power 4 or greater. Kiora also pairs very well with Loot, since her only loyalty ability lets you untap a permanent, letting you use multiple of Loot's exhaust abilities at once. Temur Ascendancy gives all your creatures haste, which can be huge if you're able to play multiple beasts in a turn, or create a bunch of tokens all at once. Speaking of tokens and planeswalkers, we also have some that make beasts. Garruk Wildspeaker, Garruk Primal Hunter, and Vivian Monster's Advocate all have a loyalty ability that lets you create a 3/3 beast token. They all also have excellent utility with their other abilities, from card draw to pseudo mana ramp and library casting, making them all very potent in a lot of different situations. For further cost reduction, we have Urza's Incubator, the quintessential cost reduction card in all Kindred decks. 2 colorless mana can go a long way in a deck that's mostly about high casting cost creatures. There's also the best beast utility card in the game in Aethercharge. Aethercharge may look mediocre at first, especially at 5 mana, but it does some serious work in a beast-focused deck. Trust me when I say this, but this will be the best card in the deck that will end games quickly as soon as it's played. For further utility cards, we have Raise the Palisade and Azuri's Predation, both which act as a sort of one-sided mass removal spell. Raise is almost akin to a Cyclonic Rift against creature-heavy decks, whereas Azuri's Predation is a way to both create numerous beast tokens while also sniping off some of your opponent's smaller creatures. Contested Cliffs is a great beast-based land, letting you fight an opponent's creature with one of your beasts. Similar to Aethercharge, don't sleep on this card. It can do some serious work in a deck like this. There's also Primeval Bounty, which not only creates beast tokens, but can also make our beasts bigger or give us life, depending on what is played. Primeval Bounty is another one of those generally good cards, giving us an advantage over your opponents in one of multiple different ways. Return of the Wildspeaker is great, as it'll act as a pseudo overrun effect in this deck, or give you a ton of cards, giving you yet another advantage over your opponents. Magic is all about gaining small advantages over opponents that ramp up over time, and both of these cards are great examples of ways to do this. Here's an example deck list utilizing all the previously mentioned cards. Additional cards include more card draw in Elemental Bond and Growth Spiral, more beasts with very useful effects in Manglehorn and Kona Rescue Beastie, and some useful utility lands in Kessig Wolfrun and Mosswort Bridge. I have a feeling that Loot is going to be a very powerful and very popular commander. There are so many ways to build a Loot deck, and if I'm being honest, probably quite a few ways to combo off with him, as he has extremely powerful abilities, and flickering effects are not in short supply nowadays. The main positive of Loot, especially in this deck, is his ability to be a great value engine. Drawing cards and making mana at such an efficient rate is extremely powerful. I mean, those are literally the 2 most powerful things you can do in Magic, and he does both with extreme ease. Pair him with the flicker effects and you'll gain so much advantage over your opponents, it'll likely be close to overwhelming. That being said, Loot is unlikely to be a game-winning commander, but he really doesn't need to be due to the value he provides. Now, as for why I chose to make this a Beast Kindred deck, I'll need to provide some insight into one of my personal decks. A while back, I created a Bloodborne-themed Surrak Dragonclaw deck that was a Beast Kindred deck. Why Surrak and why Beasts? Well, for those who aren't familiar with the video game Bloodborne, there's an initially human character named Father Gascoigne, and one of his most famous quotes before fighting him is "Beasts all over the shop." This inspired me to make a Father Gascoigne, played by Surrak Dragonclaw as the commander, beast-based deck. And let me tell you, it does some serious work. The card advantage I get from all the beast-based card draw effects is absurd, and like I mentioned before, Aether Charge and even Contested Cliffs are both absolute bombs that have wrecked my opponents when playing. The beasts themselves are also very powerful, and overall, it's just a very fun deck to play. I'm not quite sure yet if I want to replace Sirach with Loot, simply due to the theme, but I do know that if that wasn't a conflicting point for me, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Loot is going to make for a monstrous commander for any Beast Kindred deck, and since I already have first-hand knowledge of how absolutely fun they are to play, it would be a no-brainer to have him helmet. So if that sounds like something you enjoy, or you just want to try out a relatively less popular Kindred deck with beasts, give Loot a try. I could pretty much guarantee you'll at least have fun doing so. I hope you enjoyed watching this deck tech on Loot the Pathfinder. The full deck list outlined in this video can be found at the Architect link at the top of the description. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to drop a like and comment, as well as subscribe to the channel for more Magic content. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.